Hello, 8th grade. I hope you enjoyed your catch-up day. I hope that was helpful. It was helpful for me, particularly trying to deal with 6th grade essay plans. So chapter 11, To Kill a Mockingbird, we finished on Wednesday. Here are your notes. Before we start the notes, I'm just going to note in our character list, on chapter 11, we saw a lot about Mrs. Dubose. So if you haven't written her down, you do want to note. She was the old lady who lived down the street. She screams at the children when they pass her house. We also find she is a morphine addict. Okay, so chapter 11 notes. Our first thing we note are new boundaries. They are somewhat physical boundaries, but it's also the growing upness. So the fact that they're now going further away from their house and that they are passing Mrs. Dubose's house, which is kind of a frightening thing. The next point we see Mrs. Dubose insults Atticus, and this is what really upsets the children. Jem, in particular, cuts off the tops of the flowers. So when it mentions the camellia, I'm not going to say it right now, that was a type of flower in her yard that he destroyed. Okay, the next bullet point, Jem has to read to Mrs. Dubose. That's his punishment, is he is going to read to her. Okay, we then have a bullet point on the alarm clock keeps reading time, but it's set longer each day. What else is it keeping time for? That's the time before she gets her next dose of morphine. She's trying to break the habit. So the alarm clock had two purposes. It keeps the time for how long Jem has to read, but it's also making it she can go longer and longer without the next dose of the drug. Okay? We then see Mrs. Dubose dies. We find out then she was a morphine addict, and she kicked the habit with reading. Listening to Jem read took her mind off of the withdrawal symptoms. The last thing we see, Atticus says she was a real lady and showed true courage. Maybe not the way we think of a lady, but the courage to fight an addiction, the courage to not be an addict anymore, took a lot. Important quotes. On page 100, Jem survived Boo. It was cowardly to stop at Miss Rachel's. So we see again this idea of courage. The fact that if Jem could face his fears in the middle of the night to go out and get his pants from the Radley place, if he could face that fear, then he shouldn't be afraid of an old woman. Page 112. Real courage is knowing you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway and see it through no matter what. Again, this shows courage. This is Atticus talking about the trial and the fight that's about to take place. He knows it's a losing battle, but he says there's an element of courage in fighting for what's right because it's what's right. It's not what's easy, it's hard, but it takes courage. We see that even with Mrs. Dubose. She's fighting the addiction. It's not easy, it's hard, but she's trying to do what's right. Okay, notes on themes and motif on page 104. Once again, we hear it's not time to worry. So this relates to growing up and what is actual education. They're going to learn when is it time to worry? When should you be afraid? There's a time to be afraid, but this is not time to worry. Now, technically, the Bible says you're never supposed to worry, but looking in the context of this, it's not time to worry yet. Page 104 to 105, Atticus gives reasons for defending Tom. Why is he doing it? Because Atticus has moral courage. He knows what's right. He knows defending someone from a false accusation is right, no matter the color of the skin. It's right, so he's going to do what's right. Atticus, we also see, is assigned to the case. He did not volunteer. He didn't look for this challenge, but it was given to him. He's having the courage to accept it and not refuse. And then last but not least, page 112, we see real lady, the idea Mrs. Dubose has courage. This is also going to be kind of our idea. We talk a lot about the Southern Code and who's a lady, who isn't. Well, here we're seeing a real lady has courage. Okay, the last thing for today. As we read through chapters 12 and 13, you have one new vocab word. Turning over this way. It is an adjective. It is the word tedious. That means it's boring. I know you never find English tedious. Okay, have a great day, 8th grade.